Now, we're delighted to say we have a brilliant guest on the show today. He is, amongst other things, former world number one, 44 wins across 4 different decades. That includes 25 wins on the European Tour. At majors, he's been second at the Masters, second at the Open, third at the US Open, third at the US PGA. He is a 2-time Order of Merit winner on the European Tour, 10 Ryder Cup appearances as a player, 7 winning teams, vice captain, obviously, in 2018 in Paris. And we're presuming captain in Italy very shortly. His first win on the European Tour was the Scandinavian Masters in 1996. His most recent win was in Abu Dhabi in January 2020. I am, of course, talking about Lee Westwood. That is quite the haul. That's not a bad career, is it?
Not bad so far. Still working on it.
And you've just got the Ryder Cup captaincy.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I'm honoured and delighted to be named Ryder Cup captain on this show. Yeah, thanks.
Well, how does that work? Because I've heard you say Italy would suit you. You like the sound of that, and for various reasons. Do you, somebody with your pedigree, do you just click your fingers and give the European Tour Committee the nod?
I think you just your game has to slip off, so you can't qualify for the team anymore, and you have to be old enough to fall into that bracket of still in touch with the players, but too old to qualify for the team type of thing. So we'll see.
Yeah. I think at the moment,
Lee, though,
you were on course to qualify this year if things stood as they are.
Yeah, I'm in the automatic qualifying positions at the moment. So we'll see how that goes. Last few events, you know, when they're going to be now or the next few events, who knows? So, I mean, I'd love to play at Whistling Straits, obviously. But, Podrick's spoken to me and he said I'm going to be involved in some capacity. So I guess if I'm not playing, then I'm going to be a vice captain, which is still great fun. I did that at Paris, and then it gives you a bit of a sort of idea of what the captaincy is all about. So obviously I'd love to be captain in Italy. I've mentioned it before. I think you sort of have to throw your name in a hat, and I've done that. And you have to see who the other candidates are, and pick the right one.
Lee, I mean, you said it yourself. You're in the automatic qualifying places for this year's Ryder Cup, but it speaks to a massive upheaval in whatever plans you had about being a non-playing participant in the Ryder Cup. I mean, it wasn't just Abu Dhabi in January. You were tied 6th in Nedbank in December, tied 10th in the Turkish Open. Your game is completely. I heard you call it a revitalization. It's like your game is completely exploded again. So surely to God, you must be thinking, hang on a second, never mind, vice captain, let's delay the captaincy for another few years until my game finally does go south.
It's a tricky one, really. You have to judge it. And obviously I'm playing some good golf this year and I am in the qualifying spots. But at the same time, you don't want to be out of touch with the players that are playing in your team. You know, you want to be able to, play with them and compete with them and get sort of an idea of what kind of players they are under pressure. So yeah, it's a tough juggling act. It'd be a difficult decision for me right now. 3 years or 2.5 years away is quite a long time in any sport. So I've got quite a bit of time to think about that. But Italy, if it's in 2 years, I'm 49. It would make a lot of sense. I think the time after that's in New York. I'm probably going to make a better captain in Europe than I am in the States. There's other candidates for the ones in the States that, somebody, the likes of Ian Poult, who lives in the States. So it just seems to fit well, me doing it in Italy.
You look like a man who's still very much in love with the game. Like, I know you turn 47 next week. Are you surprised by how much in love with the game you still are? Like, you're still bouncing out of bed in the morning for practice when you're at tournaments? Do you still enjoy the travel, the hotels? Is it come as a surprise that more than 25 years into your career, that it's still giving you the joy that it does?
Yeah, I mean, this season is the 28th season on the playing professional golf. So, I am. If you'd have asked me 25 years ago, would I still be around, enjoying it and competing at the highest level at this stage? Then, I probably would have said no. But, over the years, I've learned to adapt my game and the way I've approached the game, and my practice routines and things like that. I don't really hit many balls anymore. When I'm practicing, I'll work on my short game and my putting quite a lot. and I'll do a lot of work in the gym. My flexibility, but I've got a swing now that's not really going to change, and it's just a case of tweaking that and fine tuning it and getting the synchronization of it right, and then turning up to tournaments, being in the right frame of mind mentally and physically. So it's been a long career, and I've enjoyed all of it. But you mentioned the thing that I like the least, and that's the packing of suitcases, staying in hotels, and being away from the family a lot.
Lee, I'll read a quote that you gave recently. I'm having a different kind of fun now. It's hard to explain. The outcome or how I play doesn't really bother me. I still give 100% every time I'm not there, which is all I can do. And that gives me a strange sort of freedom that is very different from where I was a couple of years ago. Can you talk a little about what changed that gave you this new sort of freedom?
Yeah, I think I started working with a guy called Ben Davis that works with Steve Peters, and he sort of has been coaching me on the mental side of it for a couple of years now, and he's given me this ability to not really worry about outcomes and things that I can't control. The only things I can control are the things that I am doing. I might play great one week and to the best of my ability and not even finish in the top 10. So, what's the point in setting goals like finishing the top 10 or winning tournaments and things like that? If you cast your mind back to the start of the year in Abu Dhabi, I went into that tournament having hit very few golf balls, not having practiced at all through the winter, and I turn up to a tournament and win it, and it had a high class field as well. So you never really know what to expect, and what's on the other side, so to speak. So what's the point in worrying about it? What's the point in worrying about how you're going to play and whether you're going to finish high up or you just can't control those things. The only thing I can control is really my golf swing and the way I approach a tournament.
What's can you tell us what's Robert Rock working with you on? Like what's he doing? I mean, I presume he's leaving your swing well enough alone. So what kind of work are you doing together?
No, we work quite a lot on the swing. He's sort of given me a bit of a new lease of life on the way I think about the golf swing. We work on more of a one-piece takeaway, less wrist hinge. Setting the right arm a bit different at the top of the backswing. It's certainly helped me hit the ball further, and my iron shots have become a lot straighter as well, and my distance control, my iron shots is a lot better. And my pitching's improved as well through not using quite as much wrist hinge. Probably one of the faults in my golf swing over the years. I have had such a lot of wrist break that on the pitching I've put a lot of spin on it, and I tend to spin it left, and that's awkward to judge. When it's zipping back 20 feet sometimes on the green. So the new way I'm kind of trying to swing the golf club with Robert, and that I'm much more consistent with my pitching and my ball flight and my distance and spin control.
How much pressure have you put on yourself over the last couple of years to make sure you maintain distance and even increase distance? When you look at what's coming out of America and out of the college system there, these metronomic golfers who just hit it long and straight consistently, how important has that been to make sure that you can maintain, even for your own self-confidence, that you can go out and walk side by side and match these guys?
Yeah, well, that sort of goes back to what I've been working on with Ben. I can't compete with them hitting it 330, 340 yards with 190 mile an hour club head speed. I've got what I've got, and I have to compete with my assets really. And I know there's certain weeks where I turn up to a golf course and I'm not going to have a great chance of winning that week. It might be a Bombers golf course, and the US PGA at where was the US PGA in New York last year, and I turned up there and I knew I wasn't really going to have much of a chance. It was wet, the rough was thick, and there were a lot of 500-yard par fours, and just didn't fit into the way I play the game. But you get me around a different golf course, like in Abu Dhabi, where length it's a long hitters golf course, and I still do have that length, but it's not. You can get away with other assets in your game. Then I know I can compete. So. I'm always looking for a driver that goes 5 yards further. But my main thing is, and I've always said, if you give me 290, 295 down the middle of every fairway, I'll take that. I'm not interested in that one that goes 330 yards but finishes in the rough. I know I can play any golf course from 295 down the middle. And then it's just a case of working on my putting and make sure I hold plenty of putts, because I give myself a lot of birdie chances between sort of 10 and 25 feet.
Yeah. And I was just going to ask you about the putting. So you started working with Phil Kenyon?
Yeah, I've worked with Phil Kenyon for a while, yeah. But we went to the Claw in October last year after the Dunhill.
Yeah.
I put poorly at the Dunhill, played well tee to green, and just the putting was, I was 160th or something like that in putting. So I decided, go and see him on the Monday there, and there needed to be a drastic change. And we worked on the putter up my arm, that way of putting, or going to the claw, or I use a finger more down the back, side and back of the shaft, and pencil grip. And, that one worked the best with all the numbers on the screens and everything, and I got a better roll with that, and I rolled it down the line better. And I felt more comfortable doing that. And I decided to, stick to that for a period of time and see how that went. And, I'm still using it now and it's going well. I feel like I'm hitting the ball out the middle of the putter more often, with the right loft on the golf club and rolling it the hole more consistently.
Now that you have this seemingly a whole new team, you've got your fiancée Helen on the bag, you're working with Ben Davis, you're working with Robert Rock, and you've found this kind of new lease of life. How does that help you then or how do you assess your long career as someone who was one of the very, very best players, certainly of his generation, if not of the last 50 years? How do you assess both the kind of accomplishments and the disappointments?
I think in any sport, in any career, there's going to be disappointment. So, you can't focus too much on those. You've got to look at them, obviously, and learn from them. But you've got to try and focus on the victories, mainly. They're the most important thing. Golf and sport is all about building up momentum. So you've got to feed off those good times and, learn from the bad times, but try and brush them away quickly, especially in golf where you don't win very often. I've got a big win percentage in my career, but I must have played getting on for 800 tournaments now and only won 44 times. So what's that, 5%, roughly? So you have to set small goals all the time that are attainable so you can keep building up your confidence.
Majors in golf are this curious thing because there are players, like we have Andy North on the show from time to time, who's won 3 tournaments to your 44. 2 of them happen to be majors,
Yeah.
And there is so much emphasis put on the majors. And I would say the casual golf fan or the casual sports fan will not maybe know you were world number 1, will not know about the 44 wins, will not know you've had 19 top 10s in majors, 12 top 5s. And they might just say, oh yeah, Lee Westwood never won a major. Why was that? Which is this terribly unfair kind of a reductive way to look at your career. When you look at the majors, did you feel like you played your best? Like, as I said, 19 top 10s, 12 top 5s. Did you feel like you managed to play a lot of your best stuff in majors? Do you feel like you let a few go? Is there like a trend as to why you didn't get over the line in one of them? Because you gave yourself so many chances and you did play really good stuff in majors.
Yeah, I mean, for about 10 years there, from about 2008 to 2016, I contended in a lot of major championships, gave myself a lot of chances. Some days, final days I played well and somebody played a little bit better, like Phil at the Masters. Other days, I didn't play so well. There were times that I made mistakes, like 3-putting the last green at Turnberry to miss out on a playoff. Torrey Pines, playing with Tiger, I made a bad decision with about 6 holes to play, which probably costed me. But, through all those times, I gave it my best shot and, made what I thought was the right decision at the time. And that's all you can really do, to be honest. You can't make yourself win a major championship. You can just get yourself in position. If it happens, it happens. Sometimes it happens for, people at major championships, picking out players like Ben Curtis and Todd Hamilton, people like that, that have won major championships. They played their great on that week and, they picked up their major championship. Just it hasn't happened to work for me yet. So, but all you can do is put yourself in the position and do what you think's the right thing at the right time.
And I think that's one of the most admirable things about the way you approach majors, because Padraig Harrington has said before that, he figures and, he's into his psychology, as I'm sure you know. There are numerous players who come close to winning a major and don't. And it's almost so painful and so horrible an experience. They almost self-sabotage when they get within sight of doing that again. Whereas you've kept going, you've kept putting yourself in the mix on those Sundays.
Yeah, I mean, some of my most enjoyable days have been the last day of major championships. You know, I think about playing at Torrey Pines in 2008 with Tiger on the last day there, and playing with Phil at the Masters and Danny Willett at the Masters recently when he won and I finished second. And you know, it's just if you're a professional golfer and you're one of the top golfers in the world, you want to be in those situations. You know, it's like playing in the Ryder Cup. You want to be under that kind of pressure all the time. If you're not under it, you miss it. And you know, it is a great place to be in if you embrace it and enjoy it.
Are you able, like, I think you're going through some of the names who won majors, one off, like Stuart Sink, obviously, in 2009 at Turnberry, when you mentioned three putting the last. In a situation like that, where there's so much focus and people are talking about it for months afterwards, like, do you have a sort of period of, all right, I'm just going to accept the disappointment, like the car ride home, and then is it within 48 hours you've switched off and you moved on to the next tournament, or are there some that linger longer than others?
Yeah, I mean, that one in Turnberry was about 12 hours and 3 bottles of red wine. Some have been less, some have been 2 bottles, some have been 1.
Yeah, I hear you.
No, I shake off disappointments pretty well. You know, I played great that week, and just made a mental error on the last green going for the putt. But you know, it's just one of those things. Like I said earlier, you do what you think's the right thing at the right time, and sometimes it doesn't work. So, you know, if you don't like being in those situations, don't play professional sport, really.
I feel stupid asking this question, so feel free to shoot it down, because you've won 44 times, right? So, but sometimes perception isn't always reality. The perception would be unfairly or otherwise, and you know your game better than anyone. The perception would be your short game has let you down at those crucial moments. Is that how you see it?
I tend to look at it this way. I mean, I was world number 1 for half a year. You don't get to world number 1 by having any weaknesses in your game.
Yeah.
You know, and part of it was my own doing, really. The fact that, you know, my driving and long game was at such a high standard. Any other part of my game was not going to look as good, was it? It was going to be perceived to be a weaker part of my game. Well, you know, in 2000, I remember winning the Order of Merit in Europe, and I think I was first in putts per green in regulation and first in total putts the whole year.
Right.
So everybody, and it's a bit how people kind of look at golf and look at statistics. People sort of look back at Tiger Woods' career and they think he dominated and played great all the time and hit it close all the time and drove it miles and straight down the middle. When actually, if you look at Tiger's career, he didn't. He won a lot of tournaments playing his B game, as he'll admit, you know. And the thing with Tiger that was great about Tiger was he's fantastic at getting up and down consistently from places, and his putting was spectacular when he was, you know, really dominating the sport in, you know, 2000, 2001, around there. So, you know, people's perceptions of how you played are sometimes a little bit skewed. So, you know, you have to be quite careful if you're analysing people's games.
Yeah, I get that, because even you watch Rory now, and if Rory misses a putt from anywhere, even if everyone in that day has missed the putt, the commentator will say, yeah, just the putting, getting Rory again. But statistically, he might be having a very good week.
Well, the thing with Rory is he drives it so well. Rory now is one of the few people that can overpower a golf course with his driving. There aren't many people can do that now, because the way technology's gone, it's brought everybody together with the driving. Everybody is a good driver of the golf ball now. Whereas 20 years ago, when clubheads were small and you had to hit it out the middle, you know, there were half a dozen great drivers of the golf ball. Now there are half a dozen poor drivers of the golf ball. So Rory's a fantastic driver, and he overpowers golf courses with his driving. He gets a long way down there, down the middle. And then he's hitting a lot of wedge shots and a lot of, let's say 8 or 9 irons in. He's going to give himself a lot of birdie chances, a lot of short putts. The more short putts you have, the more you're going to miss. And then, you know, people look at it and they pick out the one that he's missed. They don't pick out maybe the 8 or 9 that he's rolled in from 5 to 10 feet. They pick out that one he's missed from 3 feet, where, well, you know, you're going to miss a few.
You mentioned Tiger there. That was the Rocco Mediate US Open. That was Tiger and his broken leg and all that, was it? Yeah. Wow, amazing to see get a front row seat at that. When Tiger was at his best, and you're watching him, and I take your point about his B game and his C game, but at his best, did you get to play with him when he was really firing, and what kind of jumped out at you?
Yeah, I definitely played with him when he was playing his best. Just that he didn't have any weaknesses really. And how good his putting was. You know, I enjoyed watching him hit it, but I enjoyed more the way he ground it out around a golf course. You know, the way he'd miss a few greens, but the way he'd get up and down and he'd roll that, you know, 15, 18 footer in when he needed to keep his momentum going in and around. His mental strength more than anything.
Your career has obviously overlapped massively. You won your first tournament in '96. He's just emerging on the scene. Like, when you look at the Tiger era, is it the best thing that ever happened to your career, considering how the game grew financially, or was it the worst thing that ever happened to your career because he won so many bloody tournaments that you may well have ended up winning?
No, I think it's the best thing that's happened to golf. Never mind my career. You know, he's taken it to such a different audience, a diverse audience, and you know, TV figures have gone up and the revenues from that have gone up. So, you know, it's been good for us as players, and I think good for fans to have Tiger on the scene for, you know, the last 20 years. You know, it's been an exciting time in golf. You know, arguably one of the best players. There's only two really to contend for this. He's arguably, you know, one of the two best players that's ever lived. So, you know, it's nice to have been right there watching it all, really, with, like you say, a ringside seat.
Can I ask you, just to go back for a second, to talk about driving? So just the other day, because there's obviously no live golf on, so I ended up watching the recap of the 1997 Masters. And my first thought was, I was watching Tiger and I was going, geez, he's hitting a lot of 3-woods off the tee. And I realized it's not a 3-wood, he's hitting driver. But as you said, the driver heads were smaller. So in order to flush one out the middle, you really had to be a talented driver of the ball, which isn't necessarily the case today. Now, I'm not saying that the golfers who hit it a mile aren't very talented, but as someone who definitely fit that first category, I mean, you were a terrific driver of the ball before the technology took this massive jump up. How do you find it? I don't mean, is it frustrating, but when you look at a group of golfers who are absolutely lacing the ball with all this new technology, that, like, look, if I gave you like an old steel shafted driver into your hand with a smaller head, like, there's not a chance you'd be finding the same number of fairways. I mean, so has that change kind of frustrated golfers like of your generation who definitely would be like, who had the skills to hit it with the harder club?
It is a little bit frustrating in a way. You can see how, you know, technology has kind of gone that way to suit. It's certainly great for amateurs that the hit sweet spot's bigger. It's any great driver of the golf ball, you know, from 25 years ago is not going to be happy with it because, you know, they've lost an advantage. You know, just before this lockdown, I went out and played close house with my son Sam, and I took out a wooden driver because I'd cleaned the garage out, and I just happened to found an old persimmon wooden driver, which actually is smaller than a 5-wood now. And I got to the 18th and I hit one and I absolutely flushed it. I actually hit it out the screws. There were screws in the face of this driver, and flushed it straight down the middle. And then he teed his new Ping G40 up and hit one a bit high and out. Hit one a bit high and out the toe, and he hit it 10 yards past me. So that's just exemplifies, you know, what technology's done to the drivers of the golf ball. You know, I hit one out the screws. Albeit the golf ball is now not made for, you know, the old driver. It doesn't spin enough because this one just kind of dropped out the air as soon as it got to about 220 yards. You know, the old Ballata used to spin a lot because it was made for that driver. Yeah. So the thing I see with kids nowadays, like, I've got a certain way of swinging it, and it's a way of swinging it that suited equipment, possibly like early to mid 90s. Now you see these kids coming out, they've got a golf swing that is tailor-made to today's equipment. They hit it as hard as they can, tee it up high, launch it as high as they can, no spin on the ball, not really worried where it's going. You know, the moment of inertia has been moving back in the driver, you know, so if they have 1 week where they're really on the game and they just flush it, they can overpower a golf course. But that's why you don't see the consistency in the new kids that are coming out now. You see a lot of first time winners that will win, and then you won't see them again for 6-7 months, because they've got they've got this game where it's just like, hit it as hard as I can. I'm just waiting for those 4 weeks a year where the game's really on, and if I get lucky, it'll be in a big tournament, and I'll win. And if I have a good putting week that week, I'll win. But you don't see them ticking over with the top tens or the consistency nowadays. They're just not. They're not brought up. They're not bred to be consistent golfers anymore.
That's really interesting. And have you had to change your approach and maybe say to yourself, I need to get a bit more aggressive and go for broke a bit more?
No, I mean, I can't. I just, I do my own thing. I can't compete with that. I'm, like you said, 47 next week. It's, they're in the gym, training hard and trying to make themselves as big as possible. And, the tall lads with long levers, and, that's just the way they've been brought up to play the game. Whereas kind of my generation, you look at somebody like, or even just before my generation, a Langer or a Faldo, somebody like that, would be more of a fairways and greens and consistent type of player, because that's just the way you have to play with the old equipment.
Yeah. On the Ryder Cup stuff, they've all been shown on Sky again at the moment. We're all watching the old stuff. It's actually great fun watching the old stuff. What a mad thing for you as what were you, 22, 23, maybe 24, when Seve Ballesteros is your Ryder Cup captain? By all accounts, he was full on. Like, was he almost showing you how to hit shots out of a bunker and showing you how to, club section, or what was he like?
Yeah, he was one of the more involved captains I've ever played under. You would just, in the practice round, certainly you would just be, playing a bunker shot or something like that, and then the crowds would part and you'd come stalking out the crowds, telling what you'd done wrong on this bunker shot, and I'd be like, no, I thought I played a good one there. I'm not Seve Ballesteros after all with your short game. So yeah, it was a fun week to play, and I played with Nick Faldo 4 times, and Seve was the captain. I had one of those surreal moments, those pinch yourself moments that week, where I was playing a practice round, and bearing in mind, sort of 4 years previously, I'd been at the Belfry watching the Ryder Cup and standing on the 10th tee and watching Seve go for the green, watching Langer and Montgomery and Woozy and people like that. And then I get to Valderrama in 1997, and I'm stood in the middle of the 17th fairway. I did the longest drive of all 4 of us, and I'm stood waiting for my shot. And I look back, and there's Seve stood in the middle of the fairway, and I'm playing practice round with Monty, Langer, and Nick Faldo, and Seve stood there watching the 4 of us, and I'm a 24-year-old kid playing with his heroes and actually being watched by one of his biggest heroes, Seve, and it was just one of those pinch yourself moments, like, yeah, this is the big time.
Wow. What does that do for your confidence?
It did a lot for my confidence, to be honest. It did a lot for my confidence just being sat in a team room, listening to them all talk about various things. But obviously playing with Nick, that gave me, a lot of confidence. So on that first tee, you look across and you're playing with, one of the all-time record points holders in the Ryder Cup. And, I think he was playing his 11th Ryder Cup, and with all these majors to his name. So you knew pretty much even if he didn't play that good, it was still going to be there or thereabouts and pretty good. And he would have most of the answers to the questions that I would ask about, playing in the Ryder Cup. So.
Lee, if you had the choice of your ideal 4-ball, including yourself, so what 3 other players would be in it?
Seve would be one. Probably Hogan and Arnold Palmer.
Why? Yeah.
I just loved the way that Hogan swung the club, and then just the charisma of the other 2, Palmer and Faldo and Ballesteros. You knew instantly when they walked into a room, even if you weren't looking at the door, that there would be a different feeling in the room if either of those 2 walked in there. They had this, you just a little bit of sparkle to them. Well, a lot of sparkle to them, to be honest.
And now that we've conferred you as Ryder Cup captain for Italy, which captain do you suspect you might be most similar to, or you might borrow most heavily from?
Do you know what? I don't know. I'm lucky that I've played under 10 different captains, which not many people will have done, and they've ranged from Seve, with all his flamboyancy and very straight down the line people like, Bernard Langer. McGinley was very, methodical and calculating. Thomas was a mix of everybody. So you just have to take a little bit of everybody, really. Woodsy was very passionate at the K Club. So I've obviously looked at everybody's captaincy, and it'd be nice to take bits of those. But as for being like any of them, no, I just like to be the best captain I can be, and if you've got a good enough team, you can just kind of wind them up and set them off, and hopefully you win. Hopefully you hold the most putts.
Yeah,
it is effectively a putting competition, isn't it?
Depends how the course is set up. It wasn't at Le Golf National for the last one. Yeah, we set it up because we knew we had better players tee to green. That played into our strengths after analysing the data and the statistics. So sometimes yes, it is a putting competition. Other times no, it's there's a bit more to it than that.
What's your favourite major?
I love playing in the Open Championship. Just because it's links golf and the crowds are fantastic, and you saw Royal Portrush last year, especially with Shane doing well. The crowds were unbelievable, and it's pretty much like that anytime you play an Open Championship. But obviously there's a lot more to do for a British player playing in the Open Championship, and the one I can kind of sit back and enjoy and relax at the most would be the Masters. That's my that's the one I really look forward to playing in.
Because there was a period there from 2010 to 14 across 5 years, and your worst finish was 11th in 5 years. Like there were second places in there, and then you had second again in 2016.
At the Masters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Incredible. That's a course that some people seem to have the key to. So I don't know, did Freddie Couples or one of these lads give it to you? What have you kind of learned about playing Augusta?
I think, interestingly, the Masters is, when I first turned up to the Masters, I could not see a way around it. I looked at it and I thought, God, I'm going to have to play really well here, shoot 70 or 71. And I played a bit like that the first time I ever played it. But the more you play it, the more you can see a way around it and formulate a game plan. And then you get to a stage when you do know it that well and have a game plan that you can see a way around it without your A game. I think that's why they have so many repeat winners there. Augusta is very much horses for courses. You either get it or you don't, I think. And, that's why you get repeat winners like Nicklaus and Woods and Mickelson and Langer and Faldo and Ballesteros and people like that, and couples that played, only won it once, but, over a period of 25 years, was always seemed like he was always in the top 10.
Yeah.
And you find a way around it, and you know where to be patient and where to be aggressive and where to miss the certain pin positions. The interesting thing about Augusta is it almost changes. The golf course completely changes every day with the different pin positions. So the best practice rounds you can ever have in the Masters is actually playing the previous Masters. You can have as many practice rounds as you want, but the golf course changes so significantly from Monday before to Thursday of playing it. The different way they cut the fairways and the fringes and the different firmness and speeds of the greens and things like that. The only way to really learn it is by playing in the Masters numerous times. And over the years, I gradually picked up and learned a way to get it round there, really.
So a different pin position might dictate which part of the fairway you are heading for.
A different pin position will dictate a different club off the tee sometimes. And
really? Is there an example of that? That's amazing.
But probably the third hole. There's certain pin positions on the third hole where people, you see, even to this day, you see people whack it way down there and try and get 30, 40 yards short of the green. When I'll watch it and I'll know that having a shot in from 140 yards is going to be way easier. Be able to control the spin and use the slopes on the greens to feed it into flags.
Right, because Jeff Ogilvy at last year's Masters did a brilliant interview in a different podcast, and he was talking about all the subtleties that we don't appreciate at home. Like, for instance, you might have a fairway sloping very much left to right, but actually the shot requires a draw into a certain pin, and you're calculating, it's a real golfer's course, and you're calculating all these subtleties.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, it's like it's more like a game of chess than a game of golf sometimes at the Masters. You know, you really have to sort of start at the green and plot your way back.
Mm.
Are you a scoreboard watcher?
Yeah. 95% of the time I would be, yeah. You know, it depends where I am on the leaderboard and where I am group-wise around the golf course. I didn't watch the leaderboard a lot in Abu Dhabi this year. I thought, you know, I had an idea going out with the lead. You know, if I shot a certain score, you know, there wasn't really any point looking at the leaderboard for the first 9 holes. I just wanted to, you know, do my own thing for the first 9 holes, and then I thought I'd have a look at the leaderboard going down. I think I'm going down 12 or something like that, just to see what position I was in. And I had, you know, a 2-shot lead or something like that. So it's good to know with the last few holes to play, because you need to know what you know. You need to know if you want, you can play defensive or whether you've got to be a little bit aggressive.
Yeah. The reason I ask is because at the Masters, I only realized this. I read it a couple of weeks ago, is that because they don't have electronic scoreboards at the Masters, so it's all changed by hand. So it's not real-time catch-up. So, and I think it was Tiger who said that he can hear what is a birdie roar, he can hear an eagle roar, and depending on where it's coming from, he can gauge exactly what's happening just based on the sound around him. Was that the same? Did you have that as well, that sense?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, just an instance was 2010 when I was, I think I was in the last group on the Saturday with Ian Poulter maybe, and about 5-6 groups in front of us was Phil Mickelson, and I think I had a 4-shot lead going down 10, or maybe even a 5-shot lead going down 10, and I parred 10, bogeyed 11, and as I was doing that, I could hear roars coming from 13. I heard an eagle roar, and then I heard a really big roar on 14, and Mickelson had held his second shot, and then I heard quite a big roar on 15 where he made birdie, and I think I went from 5 in front to 1 behind in the space of 2 holes, and didn't see a leaderboard until I got on the 11th green and looked to the left there. But knew that something was going on, so it didn't really come as a shock that, you know, my 5-shot lead had disappeared. It was just like, oh, that's what happened. That's what's happened, is it?
What's your favourite Irish golf course?
Portrush, I think. Am I allowed to use the north?
Yeah.
Yeah,
of course. One in the south.
No.
Yeah.
We're inclusive. We're inclusive on this show.
Yeah.
Aren't you scheduled to get married at Adair in August?
We were, but with all the coronavirus and the lockdown, we've had to cancel it. So yeah.
Cancel or postpone?
Well, we're not cancelling the marriage. Just the venue. She stood over here.
Bloody hell.
She's got a knife, so I can't say too much.
What's your sense of when it'll come
Depends
back?
Depends how lockdown goes. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's a long time to spend with somebody.
Yeah, I think we can all agree on that. What's your sense of when it's going to come back? Because obviously, I think anyone who follows you online will know you're keeping fit. There's a lot of topless photos in the gym up there. If anybody wants,
only one. There's only been one.
There's a lot of them. If that's the sort of thing you get.
Depends how many times you've looked at it and zoomed in.
Maybe that's it. Maybe that's it exactly. Like with Shane Lowry on last week, and he was quite pessimistic even about the new schedule that's put out, even talking about behind closed doors, because it's not really behind closed doors. You probably need several hundred people to get a golf tournament on, and that even though they're talking about the middle of June potentially for a PGA Tour returning, like, what's your sense of when you expect to be back playing competitively?
Yeah, I've heard that the PGA Tour looking at June. You know, the European Tour are looking at a bit later than that. I know we're looking into sort of end of July, I think, beginning of August. So, you know, everybody's got their different opinions. I just think it depends where in the world you are and, you know, what your restrictions are. So everybody's guessing at the moment. It's kind of a watch and see type thing at the moment. If I said anything, I'd just be guessing. So there's no point really.
I have 2 quick last tweets in. A listener wanted to put 2 or 3 quick questions to you. They were asking about your favorite Ryder Cup partner, and also within that they wanted to know, is it more important to you that your games match or that you kind of have a rapport as people?
I think it's important your games match, but if you have a rapport with the other person, you know, like I did with Darren and Sergio, I think that obviously adds to the pairing, the relationship on the golf course. But certainly, if you, like myself and Darren had very similar games, we hit a lot of fairways, good drivers of the golf ball, then in foursomes that helps a lot.
That first tee in 06, I'd say that was difficult to even tee the ball up.
Yeah, it was emotional. I was doing really well until I walked onto the first tee and I waited for Darren and I saw he started to, well up, and then I looked on the tee and we were playing Mickelson and DeMarco maybe, and they were both in tears, and the caddies were in tears, and even the official starter, Ivor Robson, was in tears as well. So, that was obviously an emotional time for everybody, with Darren losing his wife, Heather, and, it all came to a head there. But, to be fair to Darren, he focused on the job in hand and hit it down the middle and birdied that first hole, and then he was kind of off and running then, and just able to just concentrate on the golf that week.
This is a very cheap question, but I actually am interested in the answer as well, because you've had such a long career and you've seen so many. If you had to pick out, excluding yourself, the best driver that you've seen, iron player and short game?
Greg Norman's probably the best driver of the golf world I've seen.
Everyone says that, yeah.
Yeah, well, he was my hero growing up, and I was lucky enough to beat him in a 4-hole playoff in the Australian Open in 1997 when he was still world number one. So that's one of the highlights of my career. And, the way he drove the golf ball around Metropolitan that week, because I played with him in a couple of rounds, was just spectacular. Where with the old equipment in 97, you could shake the golf ball. He just drove it brilliantly. And then best iron player has been Ian Woosnam, I think.
Is it? Ian Woosnam, right.
Yeah, he was able to move the ball both ways, and I really used to love watching him, take those big divots and shape the ball around a golf course. And short game's Tiger. Very underrated how good a short game and putter Tiger's been throughout his career.
Okay, so if you have Norman's driving, Woosnam's iron play and Tiger's short game, you're not beating that guy.
He'd be up there most weeks.
Listen, we've kept you for far too long, but it's been great. I mean, it's absolutely fantastic having you on. Keep it going. You're flying, I guess. Come back and hit the ground running again when it all resumes.
Before you go, Lee, before you go, can I ask you something? This is completely offbeat. So in 2008, you were in Portugal at the opening of the Amondeira course. The one that has the Nick Faldo statue. So my mate is the sculptor of that statue, and he said to me, the one thing that stood out because you played, is how careful you were in your repair of divots. That you were like really meticulous. And all I kept thinking was like, this guy is old school. This guy obviously was taught right as a kid. Yeah. Like when you go out and repair all your divots. Is that are you really that meticulous?
Yeah, I always like to get it in and the grain right on it. That's why I've been doing jigsaws in this lockdown. I just love putting pieces back in. And one of my bugbears, really, the thing that frustrates me on anything is unrepaired pitch marks on a green. It's not the hardest thing in the world to do. You find where your ball landed and just repair it. It's so much better for the golf course and the people coming behind you.
Okay, so you're a traditionalist.
Oh, very much so, yeah.
Yeah. Right. We're done. Are we done? We'll let this man get back to his jigsaws. Okay. Yes. Lee Westwood, world number one, 44 wins, 10 Ryder Cups and counting. Thanks so much. Real pleasure.
Pleasure. Thanks very much.